Hi class, in this video I am going to go over the DACC Library's citation guide. I think that this is a really useful guide because it breaks down APA into two parts, which is citations, in-text citations, and also reference page citations. So I think it's really helpful and we're going to go over it. At the very beginning, it does have some useful tips that you want to be aware of. The first one is make sure that you always check with your instructor for their preferences for citations and formatting. I think that this is very important to point out because, for example, in my classes, I don't require a cover page, nor do I require a running head, but some instructors do. Some instructors want you to stick to APA as closely as possible. So it's always good to check and figure out what it is that they are asking for. The next thing is that you want to remember is that there's different ways of citing books, websites, pamphlets, movies, blogs, pictures, etc. So basically, the first step when you're citing something is you have to figure out what kind of source do I have. Do I have a book? Do I have a periodical? If you have a periodical, what type of periodical is it? Is it a journal? Is it a magazine? Is it a newspaper? Once you figure that out, you might also want to think about, okay, I have a newspaper article. Is it online or is it in print? And that actually matters because if it's in print, you're going to have to put the page numbers. If it's online, you have to put the URL address. So it's very important that you gather your sources and you identify what type they are so that you know how to cite them, because each source is cited differently. Like, for example, all books with one author are cited the same, but if it has an editor, that technically counts as an edited book, so it would be cited differently than a regular book. I know that can be a little bit confusing, but as long as you're able to identify what type of source it is and you're able to follow a citation guide like this one, you will be fine. It's just about paying attention to those details and making sure that you follow the guide step by step. And that brings us to the third tip, which is you don't have to memorize all of these rules because there are citation guides. So we have this one. We also have the OWL at Purdue, which I will show you once I am done going over this handout. And of course, there's always Google and the library, so you can always go ahead and search something on Google, how to cite this, how to cite that, or you can go ahead and ask a librarian and they can help you. So please don't think that you have to memorize all of these rules on your own. And when it comes to the style, you want to make sure that your paper is double spaced, 1-inch margins, 12-point font, and like I said, the title page, at least in my classes, I don't require it, but some of your instructors might, so you want to make sure that you always read the instructions, and if they don't make it clear, make sure that you ask them, do we need a title page? Do we need to have a running head? Do we need to follow every single aspect of APA style? And then they can let you know. Also, something else that you want to keep in mind is that you need to cite sources in the text and also in the reference page, which is the last page of your essay. And when it comes to the reference page, you want to go ahead and start a new page. And basically, why you have to cite sources in both is because in the text is within your essay. So you need to cite sources there to give credit. So whenever somebody's reading your essay and you have a quotation, there should be an in-text citation to let us know where that source is from. That in-text citation lets us know what name or what title to look for in the reference page so that we can go ahead and get the full citation. Because in the in-text citation, you're not going to cite all of the sources information. You're going to do that in the reference page. In the in-text citation, you're only providing the author and the year, and then in the reference page, they can go ahead and find the rest of the information. When it comes to your reference page, you want to make sure that you list all of your sources alphabetically. And again, the reason for that is because this makes it easier for the reader to find the source that they are looking for, and it makes it easier to keep your sources organized. And also remember that there is a hanging indent whenever you create your reference page. And I'll show you right now what I mean by that. Okay, so now that we have gone through this, oh, by the way, I should mention that APA does get updated every few years. It's not as frequent as you might think. For example, we were on the 6th edition for a while, for a few years, but now we have updated to the 7th edition. So there are some things that are a little bit different. I will probably post a video that lets you know what has changed. In case you were more familiar with the 6th edition and you're wondering, well, is it completely new? Do I have to learn a whole new style? No, they've only changed, a few things, but it's important to keep in mind that right now we are working with the 7th edition. Since it recently got updated, I think it got updated last year or the year before. When you go online, you might still find a lot of sources that have the 6th edition or Microsoft Word. I don't know if they've already updated to the 7th edition. If you use those Microsoft Word citation machine, I don't know if it's already been updated, but just keep in mind that we are using the 7th edition, which I think was updated in 2020, since that's what it says here. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the in-text citations. So like I was saying, in-text citations go within the text of your essay, right? And there are 3 ways of integrating sources, which if you look at the APA and Research Tools module, you will see that I have a section where I talk about when to paraphrase, when to quote, and when to summarize. So basically, you can integrate sources by paraphrasing, by summarizing, and by quoting. Whenever you integrate sources in any of these ways, you need to put an in-text citation. The reason for that is because this is not your original idea. This is something you borrowed. So anytime you put something in your essay that you borrowed, you need to go ahead and cite it. Now, the only things that don't need to be cited are things that are common knowledge, which means that everybody knows or should know. And also, you do not need to cite original ideas that belong to you. Everything else that is not yours and that is not common knowledge needs to be cited. Okay, so as you can see right here, they call this the author date method of citation. Basically, in-text citations only require the last name of the author and the year. Now, you can go ahead and do this in several ways. Like, for example, you can have a signal or introductory phrase that has the author's last name, and then you could put the year in the parentheses, and then you can go ahead and finish the sentence. Now, as you can see, this is paraphrased content, which means that it is content that you are putting in your own words. That's why it's not quoted, because you are not copying it directly, word by word. You are putting it in your own words. So you can go ahead and put the author, the year at the beginning, or you can go ahead and put the author and the year at the end of the sentence. If you do this, remember that the period always goes at the end of the parenthetical citation, because technically the in-text citation is part of the sentence. Or you don't even have to put a parentheses, because you can also make it part of the sentence, like here. In 2006, Smith's study showed that cats instinctively avoid being bitten by snakes. So you could just also do it this way. Now, also keep in mind that when it comes to parentheses, whatever is inside parentheses, you do not read. So, for example, this would read as Lang found that cats instinctively kill snakes. So don't think like, well, if I do it this way, the 2009 is going to make the sentence sound weird. No, because in writing, the parentheses is not something that is read as part of the sentence. Moving on to direct quotes. Direct quotes are when you copy something word by word, so you have to go ahead and put quotation marks. Now, when it comes to quotes, you still do the same thing where you add the author's name and the year, but you also need to go ahead and add a page number. And the reason for that is because quotes can be found in specific pages. When it comes to paraphrased content or summarized content, you can summarize 3 pages into one sentence, or you can put two paragraphs into one sentence in your own words. So you don't need to put a page number for paraphrased or summarized content. However, when it comes to quotes, we can find a quote in a specific page, so that's why you need to put the page number. And as you can see, all you need to do is put parentheses, last name, year, and page number. Now keep in mind that 1P is for one page. If you're doing multiple pages, like pages 25 to 26, you would have to put double P, 25 to 26. Also over here, like I said, there's different ways of setting up this information. You can go ahead and put it at the beginning, or you can go ahead and put the author's name at the beginning and the page number at the end, or the page number in the middle. Now, if you notice over here, we have a citation with two authors. So basically this source was written by two authors, and then the year is 2010. But this right here means paragraph 6. Now the reason they are using paragraph 6 is because there are no page numbers. So this is mostly for online sources. If you're getting a quote from an online source, like an online newspaper or online magazine article or online website, you want to go ahead and put the paragraph number where that quotation that you are citing appears. Now something to keep in mind is that if you are dealing with PDF pages, like this one right here, as you can see, this one does have a page number. So let's say I would quote this, I could go ahead and put page 1. But if it's a website that has no page numbers, or if it's an article that has no page numbers, you put paragraph number. So it's very important to keep in mind. And basically the way that you do that is you number the paragraph. So you can print out the source and use a pencil or pen to number each paragraph, and then that way you know which paragraph you found that quote in. I know that sounds kind of complicated, but you know, that's how you cite an APA, so that somebody reviewing your sources can go ahead and find that quote. And all of this stuff is important because you don't want to put the wrong page number, or you don't want to make up a quote that doesn't exist, because all of that stuff falls under plagiarism. So plagiarism is not just copying somebody's words, it's also providing false information about a source. So providing false information about a source also constitutes as plagiarism. So you want to make sure that you provide correct page numbers, correct years, correct authors' names, and things like that. Now, if we look at this over here, we do have paragraph numbers, but let's say, according to this method section, it seems like this is a scientific paper. So the scientific paper might be fairly long and it's divided up into sections. So in order to like not put paragraph 40 or something like that, you can go ahead and put the section title and then the paragraph. That way, if the reader needs to go find that quote, they know which section to go to, and then they can just go ahead and count the paragraphs. So please keep that in mind if you're looking at a study or some sort of scientific paper or some sort of article that's divided up into sections, multiple sections. You can go ahead and put the section title and then the paragraph. Now, of course, if you don't put the year there, this would be Lee 2000, sorry, it would be Lee, comma, 2007, comma, method sections, comma, paragraph 4. So if you leave everything at the end, you would still need to put the author's name and the year back here. But since this person put it at the beginning, they only had to put the section title and the paragraph number at the end. Now, when it comes to block quotes are basically over 40 words. You do not want to have a lot of block quotes. Block quotes should only be used when pretty much the whole quote contains information that's important and you don't want to summarize it or paraphrase it, because it's very important to word it exactly the way it is, or because you feel that paraphrasing it would make it less effective and it wouldn't sound as good. So with that in mind, you don't want to have a lot of long quotes in your paper, because then it's going to sound like somebody else's paper and not your own writing. So I would say you should not have more than one block quote every 2 pages. So one block quote for every 2 pages is maybe acceptable. But for the most part, you don't want to have a lot of block quotes. It's okay if you have several regular quotes, but you don't want to have a lot of block quotes. And even then, you don't want to have too many quotes either, because the majority of your paper should be your own writing. Quotes and sources should only be used to support your main point, not to make up the majority of your writing. But in any case, when it comes to block quotes, you cite them the same way. The only difference is that you basically block or center them. So as you can see, here's the paragraph, and then over here, you indent the whole quote, and then you put the period first, and then you put the page number or the parenthetical citation after the period. So only with block quotes is that the only time that you actually put the period before the reference page. So that is the section on in-text citations. Like I said, in-text citations help us find information on a reference page. So basically this right here is telling the reader, go look for Lang in the reference page. That's where you'll get all the information. Or this one right here is telling us, go look for Abbott in the reference page. That's where you're going to find the rest of the information pertaining to that source. So when it comes to the reference page, you want to make sure that you start a new page, and you want to title it references. Don't title it reference list. Don't title it reference page. You title it references. And make sure that it is organized by alphabetical order according to the last name. If there's no author, then obviously the title goes first. So you put the title according to where it fits in the alphabetical order, and you want to use double spacing. Also, there is a hanging indent, and the hanging indent is actually important because it's this right here. This space right here is the hanging indent. And what you see it does right here, it lets us visually separate each entry. So basically, you indent everything after the first line. So let's say this information kept going. The third line would also be indented. So everything after the first line is indented, and then whenever we start a new source, we go back to the left side. As you can see, we're back. So here we had the first line, then we indented. When we start a new source, we go back to the left, and then we indent again. So basically, this is letting us know this is a new source. That's why the hanging indent is so important, because it visually separates source entries. Another thing to keep in mind that's very important, italicize major titles like journals, books, movies, DVDs, and so forth. The reason why this is so important is because sometimes you put, for example, right here, you put the title of the article, and then you put the title of the journal or the title of the book. If you don't italicize the major title, people are not going to be able to distinguish between titles. They might not know which is the title of the book or which is the title of the journal. But if you italicize the major title, they'll be able to say, oh, okay, this is the title of the journal, this is the title of the article. So titles of articles don't go italicized, only major titles. And that's basically what I just said right here. Web pages, journal articles, those are not italicized. So right here, it talks about digital object identifiers. And basically, these have to do with sources that you find on a database. You really don't have to worry about finding them, because when you're using a database, it gives you the number. So all you have to go and do is go ahead and put it in there. Kind of like right here, this is a digital object identifier number. And sometimes you actually put DOI. Let me see if there's an example. They used to have an example of DOI, but actually that's probably one of the updates that you no longer have to put DOI. You just put the number like this right here. Before you had to put DOI colon and then the number, but now you don't. So it says, if you must break a DOI or a URL at the end of a line, break it after a double slash or before any other mark of punctuation. Do not add a hyphen, do not put a period at the end of the entry. So this is very important because putting a hyphen or putting a period could change or alter the URL address or the DOI. So you want to make sure that you don't do that. Like for example, right here, as you can see, the DOI does not have a period, and they separated it right here where there's the slash. So that's what you want to do. Don't separate it where it says like 1, 2, 0 and then put the 7 over here. You want to separate it where there's a slash, or it says before any other mark or punctuation. Also, it says use double P to indicate page numbers when citing print newspapers if the article has page numbers in book chapters. So when it comes to the journal, you do not use double P. And I know that this could be confusing because you're thinking, well, how come I don't use it in journals? But when it comes to journals, as you can see right here, you don't put the P or the double P for page numbers. You just list the page numbers. However, when it comes to newspapers, you do put the page number. Let me see if I can find an example. Here we go. This is actually a book. So when it comes to newspapers and books, you do put the page numbers. But as you can see up here, when it comes to journals, you don't put the page number. Okay, so like I was saying, when it comes to the reference page, that's when you want to make sure you know what type of source you have. When it comes to the in-text citations, all sources are cited the same: author, year, page number. But when it comes to the reference page, that's where you're going to put all of the information, and the way you format this information depends on what type of source you have. So if you have an online periodical, that means that an online periodical is either a journal, newspaper, or magazine article. And right here they give you like a basic formula for how to cite them. But again, these are all cited differently. So for example, right here, we have a few examples of journal articles. One of the things that you'll notice is that, for example, it says volume number and issue number. However, as you can see right here, this is the volume. There's no issue because there's no parentheses, and then we have the page numbers. Over here, we have volume and issue inside the parentheses. It's very important that you don't write down volume or you don't write down VOL as an abbreviation of volume. You don't have to write any of that. You do not have to write down issue number because this is how you format it. When I read this, I know this is volume and issue. So you might be saying, well, does it matter if I put volume, if I spell it out? Yes, it matters because that's not APA style. So when it comes to APA style, you do want to follow it according to the guide. Don't add information that's not asking you for here. Don't take out information. Don't put it in your own way. Just follow the citation guide. If it doesn't have the word volume, don't put the word volume. That's actually one of the things I always notice with students when they're doing journal articles. Whenever they are citing them, they always want to put the word volume and issue. Don't put those words, right? If anything, the citation styles, they've been updated to make it easier for you. Back in the day, we had to put the whole URL. If it was like super long, we had to put it all. Now, as you can see, you just have to put nytimes.com and that's it. So they're actually trying to make things simpler and convenient so you don't have to put all this information. So don't go and add words like volume and issue and pages and things like that if it's not asking for it. So right here we have multiple authors. And as you can see, when it comes to citing the authors in the reference page, it's by last name, first initial, middle initial. And then if you have another author, then you put the ampersand symbol, and then you put the last name, first initial, middle initial. Now, if that person doesn't have a middle initial, then you just go ahead and put the last name, first initial. But notice how if it's multiple authors, they are divided with the ampersand symbol. And then over here we have some more information about digital object identifiers. And like I said, these are found in database articles. A database is basically it's found in a library website. So the library has several databases, and they contain scholarly articles. They also contain studies and a lot of information, and those are usually the ones that contain the DOIs. So over here it tells you how to cite books, and it differentiates. It tells you book, chapter and book, or an ebook. So again, figure out what kind of source you have first, and then go ahead and follow the guide. And basically it's like a little puzzle where you have to find your information, your source information. You have to find it, and then you can go ahead and plug it in depending on the guide that you are using. So as you can see, there's examples on ebooks, ebook chapter, and then the last section has to do with other electronic resources and websites, like a podcast, a YouTube video, government websites, and then it tells you where to go if you need more help. Now, one of the things to keep in mind as well is that this is obviously only 5 pages, and it only covers like the most common sources that college students use. If there is something you need to cite that's not on here, I suggest that you visit one of these websites. Like for example, the Owl at Purdue is a really good website to use because it has a lot more information. So as you can see, here it is. And if you click on the Owl at Purdue, they have a lot of information for writing. They have how to avoid plagiarism. They also have help with subject-specific writing sources. But what you want to do is you want to go ahead and go to the APA guide. Which, by the way, if I didn't mention this, there's other citation styles. Like, for example, we have MLA, we have APA, we have Chicago style. We also have Harvard style. We have, I think it's called like Tiberian style. So at DACC we use APA, but whenever you have another class, and they're asking you to use MLA or Chicago, you go to the Owl at Purdue or a similar website, and you go to their guide and you follow that guide to help you cite those sources. So again, don't think that you have to learn all these citation styles by memory. So here we have the APA guide, and as you can see, they have a lot of information. And they also have an introduction. They even talk about how to use citation generators responsibly. So you want to go ahead and click on the formatting and style guide. And it provides information about the general format. And I actually have this, the Owl at Purdue, this specific page, linked under the APA and resource page. So as you can see right here, it gives you a lot of information right here. It even gives you a sample paper, and it tells you how to cite articles, books. It even talks about authors. So this right here goes into more detail regarding how to cite authors. So it tells you how to cite a single author, 2 authors, 3 to 20 authors, because believe it or not, some sources might have 20 authors. And what's really helpful about the Owl at Purdue is that it highlights in red some of the rules that have changed. For example, it says this is a departure from APA 6, which only required listing the first 6 authors before an ellipsis and the final author's name. So apparently now you do have to list most of the authors. As you can see right here, it says do not list more than 20, but you actually do have to list most of them. Unless there's more than 20, you only list up to 20. But see, this is one of those things, like I mentioned, they made our lives easier by not having to put the whole URL. So in some aspects, they have us put less information, but for some reason for this edition, they're asking us to again go and put all of the authors, whereas before you didn't have to put all of the authors. If there were more than 6 of them, you didn't have to put all of them, but now you do. So when you're looking at the OWL at Purdue, definitely look at the things that are highlighted in red, just so that you can see what are some of the changes, because some things have changed. So if you worked with APA before, definitely pay attention to the red stuff so that you know what is different. If this is your first time working with APA, then you probably don't really have to worry about the changes because you were not aware of them. So right here we have more electronic sources, and here it tells you how to cite a web page or piece of online content, so that's helpful. And it also has how to cite a Wikipedia article, though you obviously don't want to rely on Wikipedia too much because it can be edited by a lot of different people, which makes it less reliable. And it also tells you how to cite a Kindle book if you have one, online dictionary, and it should also let you know how to cite personal communication. So right here we have online lecture notes and presentation slides. So this is really helpful if you want to cite lecture notes that you took in class, or that your, sorry, not lecture notes that you took in class. These are cited as notes you received from your instructor. Or if your instructor gave you a PowerPoint with presentation slides, you would go ahead and cite them this way. If it's something that you took a note of on your own from a lecture, that technically constitutes as personal communication, which is right here. So emails and anything that you quoted from listening to an instructor's lecture, you would cite it as personal communication. However, if the instructor gave you an actual lecture notes or an actual PowerPoint, you cite it this way. But if it's just you listening to the lecture and quoting it yourself, you cite it as personal communication. So emails, interviews, they are listed as personal communication. Now, something to keep in mind is that emails or other types of personal communication are not included in the list of references because they cannot be retrieved. This is personal communication that obviously you have no transcript of or anything like that, so you cannot retrieve it. The reference page is only for sources that you can retrieve from online or the library or anything like that. Also, if you're quoting something from an online forum, it tells you how to cite it. This is something that they recently added, and of course it's because social media has become very, very popular, and there are credible institutions and publications that tweet, so it tells you how to cite a tweet. And I remember actually this was a big issue a few years ago because some people were asking, well, how do you cite a tweet? And they had to contact APA to find out, but now they've made it more widely available. So I hope this video was helpful. I know that it was rather long, but as you can see, there is a lot to APA and there's a lot of stuff to go over. And again, like I said, the OWL at Purdue is really helpful because it has more detailed information. But as you can see, it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sections on sources. And then this one is a section on author and authors. And then here's another section on basic rules. So this one is definitely more detailed and it gives you other examples. If you want like a shorter guide, you can use this one. I suggest using them both, especially, you know, if you're doing like a paper or some sort of exam that requires citation, I suggest using them both. So that's why this video is rather long, because there's a lot to cover with APA. And of course, I did not go over every single type of source because that would take a very, very long time. So please let me know if you have any questions. Please keep in mind that either myself, the tutoring center, or the library can help you with any citation questions you might have.